Hi, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 88. I am doing a live career intensive. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
All right, so welcome to episode 88. This is going to be an interesting one. Basically, what I wanted to do was do a live career intensive, and this was during the Fireball training. So I want to do 30 days of just rapid fire, sending out as much content as I could. I think I promised something like 10 videos. I ended up giving, 12 or 13 videos total out. And on the final day of this, which was July 14, I scheduled 4 live webinars, and that was a lot of fun. It was pretty intense. So I think it was like 7 a.m., something like that. We did the first one, which was a live effects class where I wanted to go through what one of my students in the mentorship had been requesting. He wanted me to elaborate on some stuff that we were discussing in a live review. And this was to do more with like sci-fi, kind of magical particles, things like that. So I said, well, rather than me show you here, let's do a live session and I can answer questions and I can do this live as well as everyone else benefit from it too. So that was a lot of fun, just kind of showing it off rapid fire. It's pretty cool. And then later that day, I think it was 11 a.m., I did a live career intensive. And this is something that we do a lot inside of the mentorship and the live action series where we will do a live call. And I'll get everyone to submit questions beforehand about like things in their career, obstacles, walls they're hitting, goals they have, or just in general questions they might have about the industry or what they're currently going through. Some people are applying for a job or they have a job interview coming up and they're worried about a certain thing, or they just have general questions, or maybe they're stuck. Others are going really well and they just want to try and figure out what the next step is in what they're doing. So there's different situations, different scenarios, but the cool thing is that we all benefit from it because it isn't a one-on-one where nobody else can listen or partake in it. Instead, what happens is all of us come together and one by one, I will unmute people's mics or microphones so that way they can talk and I can talk with them back and forth like a regular conversation. But everyone else can listen in and they can respond and type things in the comments as well if they have additional questions or if in general they want to add some advice to it. So I find that this can be really effective for all of us as a group. Now, I will admit at the very end of this 30 days, I've been pretty overwhelmed just trying to put out so much content, respond to so many people's emails, do everything that I've been trying to keep on top of. So what ended up happening is I didn't have a chance to survey everyone and ask specific questions or really do it in that sort of format. But I was able to do a live webinar. It was all on Facebook Live. But I also had a private webinar where people who followed the instructions and read the email were able to register for it and get on specifically there if they wanted to ask me questions. So in the end, this one is a bit more one way than being a two-way conversation, but there was a lot of stuff that came up that was really cool. And I pretty much just spent all my time just trying to rapid fire, throw out as much advice as I could. And so you can imagine I was pretty exhausted by the end of it. And that was the funny thing is that was webinar number 2. I was also doing 2 podcasts that day. So one was with Patty Rangel, who I'll be bringing out this episode soon. But she was really amazing, discussing everything from studying and working at NASA's Singularity University, talking about holograms, a lot of future VR, MR, AR, and everything else. It was really cool, actually. And then on top of that, I did another episode with Dave Wolvoid, who is a visual effects supervisor at DreamWorks. So that episode will be coming out soon too. And then I did a live Q&A. I think that was at 6 p.m. And, I think by the end of this, it was 14 hours of me talking and doing either webinars or doing podcasts. And so the live Q&A was basically for anyone who had questions about the mentorship or just things like that. But for the most part, I just wanted an excuse to hang out with everyone, have a glass of wine, and just talk, as well as answer questions, things like that. So it was just a lot of fun. And again, a lot of great knowledge got shared there. And then finally, what was it? It was about 9 o'clock. I did another webinar. Each one of these went for about 2 hours. So the final one was a visual effects case study where I did a Facebook Live just like the other ones, and anyone could join. And I basically went through a lot of projects I've worked on and just kind of talked about a lot of behind the scenes and how it all came together, a lot of different approaches to things or challenges that I had, things like that. So it was a lot of fun. I think it all ended around 11 o'clock. I think when we were ending, it was about 54 minutes left until registration for the mentorship was going to close. So now it's all closed for another year. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was really psyched. It was really cool to get to meet and talk to everyone. And yeah, these were all public, so anyone could join as long as you're following my Facebook page. Then you'll be able to join right away and listen in. So yeah, it was a lot of cool fun. And also you can watch the playback still too if you wanted to do that as well. So that all being said, this is the Career Intensive, which it wasn't one I heavily planned for. I just wanted to throw out stuff rapid fire, answer questions, and give as much information as I could during that time. And I hope that everyone got a lot from it. I hope that you are able to get a lot from it as well. And I'd love for this to be a conversation starter. So for you, while you watch this, think of what would be a question or two that you would have specifically pertaining to your career and where you're heading, or ideally where you would like to head. I know for a lot of us, we might be in different careers. We might be like 30, 35 and wanting to switch into visual effects. And there's others of us who want to maybe break into the industry, or we've been doing this for 10, 15 years and we want to kind of really step things up to a whole new level. And so we all have those different goals. And that's where I think that a lot of us kind of get stuck a little bit because we feel like we're in this alone. And that's where I want to try and start those conversations, because typically a lot of us are stuck in that tunnel and we just want to be able to see the light, or at least get some kind of indication about like what the next step might be. And yeah, so I think that for a lot of this, I would love to hear where you're at and where you might be stuck. So as you go through this episode, think about that. Think about what your questions might be. And if you want to leave a comment in the show notes, just go to allanmckay.com/88, and that's for episode 88, and just leave a comment there, or shoot me an email if you prefer to keep it private. And yeah, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to start that conversation and make myself available to you as much as I can. That being said, let's dive into this episode. Again, if you want to check out the show notes, which will contain lots of the information, an overview of everything discussed here, as well as links to anything we go over as well, you can do all that. Just go to allanmckay.com/88. So 88. All right. So I'll leave it there and let's get into this episode. Okay, just quickly, one of the biggest problems that we face as artists is figuring out how much we're worth. Typically, the situation is that we go into job interviews and we're asked how much we're going to charge. We either shoot ourselves in the foot by saying that we charge less than we're worth, so that way we get the gig, and indirectly end up leaving tens of thousands of dollars accumulatively over time on the table, rather than actually asking what we should be charging. At the same time, you don't want to alienate your employers by asking for too much and leaving yourself out in the cold. So what I've done is I put together a website, check it out, www.vfxrates.com. And this is a chance for you to be able to put in your experience, your discipline, the location you're working, all the good things that will give you a fairly accurate idea of what you and everyone else should be charging in your discipline. This is something that I'm going to continue to build and flesh out over time. But the key thing is actually that I don't want to just showcase how much you should be worth, but also show you and hand you the tools to grow beyond that and to learn to negotiate better, to learn to ask for the right amount of money in the right way. There's lots of additional tools and information I want to hand over to you. Everything's free. Check it out, vfxrates.com. Put in your information and you'll instantly get notified of how much money you should be charging per hour as a VFX artist. vfxrates.com. What this typically is something that we do a lot of inside of the FXTD mentorship, which is every couple of months, and I haven't done one in a while, but every couple of months we'll get together and set goals and just kind of see where we're at, see what our goals are, what the obstacles are in our way, things like that. And just to be clear, this isn't kind of like a woo-woo thing like, oh yeah, I want to, I want to get break into the industry. I want to work on my resume. How do I, format it right or whatever? It's things that are more really critical, such as, okay, I want to relocate to Vancouver and I want to be working in feature film in the next 6 months. what's the path that I need to do to be able to hit that goal. And it's been really amazing for me just to kind of see the growth that a lot of us have had by not only really nailing down like what needs to get done, but also a lot of the time having that accountability of other people around to really help us with that too. So I've got 5 billion windows open here. Today's going to be one of those days, but I'm really excited about this because it's the first time we've done it publicly. And I got to admit, with everything going on this week being the final day of the Fireball training and the final day for registration to the Effects TD mentorship, I'm doing 4 webinars today. I just did like the live effects class earlier, which was fun. It was just more going over, answering questions and a bit of effects overview. But I'm doing the live career intensive now, and I'm also doing a Q&A later on. So, I mean, if you have questions about the course, you're on the fence, I want to do a live Q&A so you can ask questions, as well as just in particular, I wanted to be more of a hangout. I think it'd just be fun for us all to sit back after 30 days of doing this and just be able to, shoot the shit. I might crack open a beer, and it'll just be a good way to end the Friday. But I'm also doing a live VFX case study at the end of the day. So we'll be talking a lot about projects I've worked on, show a lot of behind the scenes, things like that. None of this is structured, so it's just going to be very fast and loose. And but at the same time, it should be quite fun. That being said, I was quickly say hi to Kuntal, Blaz, Umesh, Joel, Stephanie, Hank, Shabana. It's great to see you. Hey, Marco. It's great to see you guys all in here too, because a lot of you were in here earlier. Richard, Gavin, Rob, Faizan, Josh, Subhash, Dwayne, Gavin, Jeff, all of you guys. Yeah, a couple of things I'm going to get going now, but I want you guys to mention like what are some of the big hurdles you think you have, and I think that's important because a lot of us I think a lot of us is kind of like go on autopilot with our career, and I think we put so much work into trying to learn the latest tutorials. Like I got to learn Houdini because I hear like that's the flavor of the month, and I got to go do that, or I got to go learn something about Nuke or ZBrush or whatever it's going to be, and we put so much work into the surface level stuff. Like, okay, great, I'm going to get better at pushing buttons. But at the end of the day, if you really want to get growth in what you're doing, there's nothing more powerful than learning to really focus in on the deep stuff, the core stuff that's really going to give you the most growth. And that is building on your career. Like it doesn't matter how freaking good you are. I mean, one of the things I say all the time is that you could be the best artist in the world, but if no one knows who you are, then how are you going to get work? And I say that a lot because it's so freaking true. Like you get these people who are amazingly talented and yet they're not getting work. And it's just because they don't know how to do it right, or 100 other reasons. And I've helped so many people with that. And as much as I love doing effects, I've definitely invested so much of my time the last couple of years more on the career side, just because I would have friends who are amazing at what they do, and they'd be like, yeah, I can't get any work, I keep applying and no one hires me. And I would look over their stuff and instantly be able to say, all right, like here's the problem, tweak this one thing and you'll get work. And then literally weeks later they're getting interviews at Sony, at Digital Domain, and at all these big studios, and they get to pick and choose what they want to do. And it's because their work's great, but it's either their approach is wrong or 100 other things. But it's all about giving clear communication, and I think that stuff's really critical. So I think for a lot of us, I think it's oh, by the way, it's cool. So we got Serbia, we got India, we got Atlanta, we got lots of different locations. Portland, Jeff. All right, well, we got to get a beer then if you're in Portland, because I'm up in Portland right now too. I'll be in LA next week and Austin the week after that. So I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. And so, yeah, I think this stuff is just so critical in that respect. It's just you really need to focus on this stuff. And it's a full-time job, okay? I always think that you need to treat yourself like a studio. You're not just going to be focusing on the art, okay? Like for you to really make that growth, you need to learn to manage yourself, and you also need to be able to present yourself. You need to be able to get the work in. And that's another thing too, is a lot of us just have that fatal flaw of being too busy being busy to actually have the foresight to think ahead. So, I think the biggest thing right now for a lot of us is usually having goals ahead of time. And I have this all the time. I hit my goals, and I make it my number one critical plan is always to keep moving forward, keep getting growth, keep hitting my goals every step of the way. But I think for me, the big ultimate goal that I had was to work in Hollywood on feature films and be a visual effects supervisor. And I remember when I hit all those goals when I was still younger, thinking that I would do it by maybe 50 or 60 years old. And I got depressed for a good year or two where I'm like, okay, well, what now? I set out with like a life goal, and maybe I should have set it to be a lot higher than it was, but I set out to have a life, all these like lifelong goals that hopefully I would do in 20, 30 years. And when I hit all of them in my early 20s, it was like, well, what's next? And, and that's why I think it's important to keep having goals and keep moving forward. And I think that with anything, like no goal is unachievable. It's more about just having a solid plan in place to do it. I've got friends who now direct feature films. I've got friends who get to work on, work from home, work from the beach, do whatever they want to do. And it all comes down to them just having that careful plan and be able to stick with it. One of my old roommates, he founded Half Brick, which makes the game Fruit Ninja. Like a lot of my friends are just, they're doing phenomenal things. And like I'm interviewing one of my friends for the podcast later today. She's worked for NASA. She was the person who went to Dr. Dre and convinced him to collaborate and do the whole Tupac hologram. So she was the person who made that all happen. And I look at like all of her accomplishments, and she's freaking amazing. And like, again, all these people are doing really phenomenal things, but it all comes down to just having those goals and positioning yourself where later all those opportunities happen. But you've got to, put in the hard work to get there. And I think a lot of us are just afraid to do that. So as we begin this, I want you guys to think about what your questions are, where you want to be, but more importantly, like, where are you at right now? Because I think that's like the number one thing I think about is like most of us are a little bit not out of touch, but just we don't really think about like where we're really at. Like we're like, yeah, everything's good. I'm perfect. I don't need to work on myself at all. And really, they're the people who usually need the most work. So you might have noticed as I put out the Fireball training, I put out like a couple of the videos had a little question box, and in fact, I should bring that up. I made it anonymous, and but like I basically put a little question box, like what's the number one thing that's holding you back in your career? Because I love that one because it's such an open-ended question. But I made it all anonymous, and half these people I wanted to like contact to be like, why do you think it this way? Like what's the excuse behind this? But yeah, I mean, it was really interesting to get a lot of feedback, because for me, I always want to know where you guys are at, like what is holding you back, or what do you think is holding you back? Because 9 times out of 10, like the thing that you think it is not. It's very much not that at all. So just coming through this, I'd love for you guys to ask some questions. I do have the webinar here, and what I will do is maybe a couple of us in here I might in the webinar, if you guys want to ask your questions, I'll read through them all, and I'll be a bit picky, but the ones I think are really relevant, I'll unmute you and we can chat for a minute if that works out for you guys. So I noticed Mervin and Milos, you guys had raised your hand. So if you guys just want to type in what your questions are in the chat, and we'll queue up a few of those, and then I'll unmute you guys and chat to you. But in the meantime, in Facebook, if you guys again want to quickly ask any questions you've got, I'm just going to scroll through really quick. Aaron, that's awesome. I don't think I'm going to make it a secret off this year. I was going to, but I've got so much travel this month. I want to taper back a little bit and get focused. I've got a lot of lessons to build this weekend for LAS. But yeah, so in the meantime, oh great, there's some cool ones coming in. So in the meantime, a couple of things I'll just mention. Like looking through the survey, one of the big ones that kept coming up was like in terms of what's holding you back. One of the really big ones was time. People feeling like they don't have enough time to do whatever they want to do. And in fact, time was like the number one when I'm just scrolling through some of them now. And I love a few of them where it's like nothing or I'm perfect. And it's like, all right, that's cool. But I think the big key one is that if you feel like you don't have enough time to work on yourself or to get your goals, I think the number one thing is just to really start to evaluate like where's all your time going. Because I feel like whenever I talk about productivity, it's the same way that like Troy Buckley, who is part of my team, and also a member of the Effects TD mentorship, he gave a Facebook Live a while back where we're talking about finances and how to manage your money. Because I feel like one of the big things is a lot of people freak out like, I need a pay rise, I got to get my money, I got to negotiate more, I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to go and get a better one because I don't feel respected because I'm only earning X amount of money. And really it comes down to like, where is all your money going? Because you can go and get a 20K or 10K pay bump by quitting and going to another company. Like, that's great. But if you're bleeding money, like if you're like me, if you're on Amazon all the time, or whatever, just like buying stuff that you shouldn't be buying, then it's a lot easier. If you want to save that 10K, 20K, 30K, just look at where the money's going. I know in my early 20s, I used to love to go out and party, and I'd drink top shelf booze all the time, and it wouldn't be unheard of for me to spend $200 or $300 a night. And you multiply that by going out 5 times a week, that's a shit ton of money. And for me, if I wanted money, like, I think the most logical thing would be, hey, why don't you switch to drinking a glass of wine or stay in tonight, and you're going to save a lot of money rather than freaking out thinking you need a pay rise. And just FYI, I'm a bit more responsible these days than I was in my 20s, but that was something I enjoyed, and that was something I wasn't too concerned about. But when it comes to that sort of thing, you're going to be able to make more money by just looking at like where your expenses go, like build a spreadsheet and do that. And the same thing goes with time. Time is exactly the same way that, I want more time in the day. Well, you can't, but I guarantee there's people getting a lot more done every day than you are. And the reason is because they make more time, they free up their time where they can, and more importantly, track where your time goes. So every day, and I'm going to jump around a lot here, but I'm talking right now about this while I let you guys trickle in questions, and then I'm going to start to answer those. So for me, I look at a lot of my time and where it goes. Well, I don't need to guess, because what I'll do is I always set out and plan my day. I use Evernote, but basically just like a single page that I'll plan down using a template. I've talked about this before, but I'll have a template of what I plan to do that day. So I drop that in, I start to block out all the things. And in fact, I could probably talk about this really, really quick if I find the right window. So like, this would be like the template I copy paste every single day. And I'm just going to mention this about time, because this, to me, it's so simple, yet it frees everything up, because I basically say, okay, more importantly, like, what are the things I need to do? So I'll put down every single task I want to do here. And the most common thing that we all do is we'll throw all these things in, like, I got to go work on my VFX shot, and I got to go and apply for jobs, and I got to go and work on my social media, and blah, 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 blah. And you probably listed about a week of stuff. And so it's very easy to put that all in, and you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to feel like crap because you feel overwhelmed. You don't know where to begin. So for me, I block out everything in here. This is the most critical block, because I put everything in so that way I know it's there. But from there, it's more about blocking out my day. So 9 a.m., 10 a.m., all this stuff. And the more I do that, the more I realize, like, hey, you know what? Like, the 500 things I plan to do today, there's no way this is all going to get done. And it gives a realistic bird's eye view of what your day looks like. But more importantly, what are the 3 things that no matter what need to get done that day? So in other words, working on my VFX to hit the deadline, making sure I publish an article I'm working on, or whatever it might be. So in a way, forcing yourself to really have 3 things that you want to do. But again, dump all the stuff you want to do in here, just because that way it's out of your mind. You don't need to think about it anymore. You've got it all written down. The cool thing is that after you do this consistently for 10, 15 days, you can go back and you can start to say, and I'll zoom in a little bit here, but you can start to see, like, okay, well, what did I actually get done? Because I'll cross these off as I go. And after a while, I'll be like, well, what did I get done? What didn't I get done? And, I've got like end of day is basically where I'm going to write down like what I got accomplished, and also what didn't get done here, because this way I actually need to put into words like, okay, well, I didn't get anything done because I was on Facebook all day, or I didn't get anything done because I was on my phone the whole time, or, I didn't plan correctly. But the more I do this, the more I realize, like, wow, I can see a lot of common mistakes of like where my time's going. And you can start to then be able to actively take measurements to think about it. So like there might be tasks that you find consistently popping up every week that you got to do. So why do them all the same, like, every single day where you're constantly disrupting everything you're doing? Why don't you batch it? Why don't you say, well, okay, after a while, these are the things that are commonly coming up. Why don't I make Friday mornings my day to do all of them at once? Because they're all the same tasks. So you're able to get in that tunnel and to start to knock things out in repetition a lot quicker. I do that with email, and it's the only way that I sometimes can keep on top of my email is I'll organize it all into folders, and that way I can just go through each subject of what I need to go through over and over and over, because my head's all in that. I don't need to constantly reevaluate and rethink what what's going on, because they're all, these emails are in regards to, fireball. These emails are in regards to the mentorship. These, and that way I'm in the zone. I can just start focusing on that one thing, and through repetition, I'm able to consistently knock stuff out instead of having to constantly stop, reevaluate, and think about everything. So, I'm not going to go on and on about productivity, because I've definitely talked a lot about the subject, but I do think it's really critical that, start tracking your time, start seeing where it's going, because it's really critical to understand, just like money, like where are my expenses going? Where's my time going? So, the most easiest thing to do is, if you want more time, I've said it before, use your lunch breaks. That way you've got an extra hour in the day. If you want, get up an hour early. A lot of people in the mentorship, they've got families, they've got kids, they've got a full-time job, and yet they're still able to get up and work on themselves, work on the training by simply getting up an hour early, or after the kids go to sleep, going to sleep in an hour later, wherever they have that time to do that. And, it's just about blocking out and locating that information. And just in general, I think that's the easiest way to start to do that. For me, I try and get up 5 or 6 a.m. and that way I've got enough time in my day before all the interruptions come in. I don't want to check my email. I don't want to do any of that. I want to focus on what's important to me. And that way, when 9 a.m. kicks around or whatever it's going to be, that's when I can open the floodgates and let all the interruptions, the phone calls, all that stuff come in. And even then, I try my best to put my phone on silent, to shut down chat applications, mute them, whatever I can do, purely so that way I can, when I choose to, open them all up and allow and control those interruptions to happen, rather than just having people calling you all day long or hitting you up, people coming to your desk. I'd rather schedule all that as much as I can. Same thing with people coming over to say, like, hey, let's chat and hang out and talk shit. It's a lot easier to say, well, hey, I'm really busy right now, but why don't we go grab a coffee later on? Whatever you want to do, and start batching that together. Get a group of 5 people together, those 5 interrupters that were coming to you, and you can go and give them that time and attention when it suits you, rather than it constantly stopping what you're doing, because it's pretty selfish for other people to come to you, disrupting everything you're doing, when you're in the middle of it all. So I'm going to read through a few things. Like I said, I'm going to bounce around a lot because it's going to be one of those days. But let me read the webinar really quick, see what everyone's been saying. All right, so question. So Mervin, I got your email. Yeah, I'm going to totally address that. It is a bit left field, but I totally will jump on that one in a moment. And Milos, okay, no worries, man. You got problems with your connection. Yeah, so just a heads up, guys. Unfortunately, the webcam, because it can only be shared in one place, and I guess the Facebook Live stole it first. So you want a video, but you can still talk here. So Eddie Gomez was saying, do you think it's better to do studio work than go do work from home if you're new? Or if you're new to VFX, go straight to work from home? Okay, so that's actually a really good question. And I gave a talk. I'm going to talk more about another time, but I gave a talk in Paris about something pretty controversial. I actually went and listed every single year for my entire career how much I made, and I had a chart showing when I first started out earning like $20,000 a year, and and then this year, and I was very aggressive, which you should be with your career, about financially I wanted to hit these goals and I want to keep growing, and I remember one of the supervisors at Blur, he had that goal of every year he needs to get a 10K pay rise or else he's going to walk. And, and whatever your financial goals are, it's important to have them. And money isn't everything. And that's, again, going back to managing your finances, it's the same deal. It doesn't matter how much money you're earning if you're burning through it. And so, money is relevant. Where you live, if the cost of living is a lot cheaper, that's another thing. You could, if you want to earn more money, simply move to a cheaper city. Leave LA and move to Thailand, move to Vietnam, move to anywhere but Australia. Australia's expensive. I just moved to Portland, and I did that confidently, knowing that I'm 2-hour flight to LA. I go to LA all the time. I got meetings throughout the next couple of months, but I know I can confidently work in Portland, and I'm not going to have any hiccups because I can bring the work in. I've got the internet at my fingertips, which allows me to do anything. And one of the big things was every year I could see my money going up. And then it got to a certain year, I think it was 2006, and it kind of plateaued. Every year moving forward, I would ask for, I want $80 an hour, $100 an hour. And there were a lot of studios who couldn't afford that. They would say, well, that's not in the budget, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, I've produced plenty of shows and I completely understand the situations they're in. So I could easily be like, well, you can't afford me, screw you, I'm going to go elsewhere. But at the same time, me going to, like, let's say a smaller studio that's specifically budgeted for a mid-level person, and then someone comes along who is like 15 years or 20 years experience, it doesn't matter how great you are. You get Steve Jobs to come and work for your company, but if you didn't budget for that before they came in the picture, then of course you're not going to have the money. There are workarounds for it, but you're going to essentially pull money from different areas of your bid to get that to happen. But the interesting thing about the talk that I gave was the fact that as an artist, I had a lot of growth, and then I hit a point where I couldn't negotiate higher than a certain number. And every time I tried, it's just no one could do it. So it was either I go work at specific studios that I knew were accommodating to that. There's certain studios that pay extremely well, and then there's everybody else. And it's not that everyone else is cheap. It's just other places, they've got big feature films going on, and they expected to hire only senior people. So what was interesting was that after 3 or 4 years of consistently having the same hourly rate every single time, I decided to change that. I decided to start working from home. And the reason for that was because that way I can pick my own hours. I can pick the projects that I want to work on. I can negotiate the money that I want. And if it's not the right money, then I don't need to do it. But more importantly, I'm not going to be stuck at a job where if I get it all done and there's nothing else to do, I still need to sit there and fill the 9 to 5 because I'm trading time for money. Instead, I rethought the process instead. It was like, I'm going to tell you how much it's going to cost to do the project. You can agree or disagree, or we can negotiate, but that's it. It isn't like I'm worth this much money and therefore, I'm going to be billing per hour. I'm going to say it's this much, and, submitting bids changed everything because I went from, and again, I don't usually talk about numbers, but this was something that I did do in Paris when I was speaking at the IA Mag Masterclass. And, but yeah, I mean, for me, it basically, I went from earning 60 an hour. I forget what that was. And again, like there are jobs where as a supervisor, completely different rates. Like you can charge 1,000 a day, 1,500 a day. But I was earning, I think, like 16 hours as an effects artist at a lot of places in LA. It was the cap unless I went to certain studios. And I went from that, which I forget what that was per year. But as an artist, not doing training, not doing anything else that I'm doing, as strictly as an artist, I was earning, after rethinking the process, I was earning around $450K a year. And that was something that, as an artist, I never thought would even be possible. Now, again, this is the first time outside of that event I've even mentioned numbers because, again, everyone's weird about money, and at the same time, it's personal for a lot of people too. But I mention that just because when we're talking about the subject of like working from home, things like that, that completely changed everything. I went from that plateau of like up, and then 4 years or whatever, consistently the same money to just spiking. And it's because instead of having to trade dollars for time, I simply said, okay, I'm going to do this job for 10K. I'm going to do this job for 100K. And we all agree on what we want to do. And as long as there's nothing major that comes and disrupts it, then that's an agreement that you're going to give me this much. I'm going to give you this result. And that's it. And what you do with your time at that point is irrelevant because what they're focused on is getting a result. They're getting your service, which was, these shots completed. So Chill, who's one of the students in the mentorship, he had mentioned this morning, I guess he was listening to a talk or something, but how I think the maximum I've ever done is 7 feature films at one given time. And you could not do that if you're working for one studio. But by having multiple clients, multiple projects, it means that if you want that stress, if you want that pressure, you can take on plenty of jobs. And as long as the quality stays consistent, I can write a lot of tools, which is what, like all the tools that I use in the mentorship, like I use them in production. I built them for a reason because I use them every single day in feature film production. And it means that a lot of time a project comes in, I'll work on it, that I need to submit sims and make directories and all this stuff. Great, that's a button. I do that. That saved me an hour of work. Multiply that by 7 projects. I'm saving myself so much time, removing human error, all these things. So bit by bit, you can go from being an effects artist to actually having systems in place, a good solid pipeline, all the things that are really important to be able to work more efficiently and be able to handle a lot more of the workload. So for me, it means that I fire a simulation off to the farm. I can switch to another project. I can work on that, get it to a point where it's rendering, fire that off to the farm, switch back to the other thing that just finished, be able to alternate and work on a lot of stuff. At the same time, I can pick and choose the projects I want to do. So and like I said, I'm going to segue a lot here, but and jump around, but Richard Branson said this, which was, if you say yes to everything, then you'll never ever, I'm totally butchering his quote, but you'll never, be worried about work, or you'll always be successful. And I think that's true to a certain degree. And anyone who listens to the podcast has probably heard me talk about 2005 was my year of saying no. And that's because it got to a point where I was taking on too much. I just launched the podcast. I was putting out like 4 episodes a week at the time because I wanted to put as much as I could early on. I was doing 3 different workshops for CG Society. I was just about to launch the mentorship. I was speaking at Autodesk University in Vegas, and I had a couple other things going on, plus relationship and travel and all the other things going. And instantly I felt like I'd hit a wall where everything was going to crumble because I was putting too much on my plate. And, I had to be very careful about, killing 1 or 2 things to make everything else, come out on top. But for me, the big thing was that, I think all of us should want this, is we want to get to a point where we can say no to everything. And so for me, it was interesting. The minute I started saying no to projects, it meant that I was freeing myself up to be available for the projects that I want to do. And this has been a notorious thing for me, where I would turn down Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, and all these other big movies just because like a day before that. And, I look back now, I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I had a lot of loyalty to, if I agreed to do something, I would do it. So I would agree to do Inspector Gadget 2. And then the next day I'll get a call saying, hey, do you want to come work on The Matrix? We got a bunch of explosions we need done for that. And, I'd be like, oh, I can't because I just agreed to do the title sequence for Inspector Gadget. Just stupid decisions. But for me, it was important to stick with what I agreed to. And by saying no, it meant that when the right project comes along, I can do it. Or if the right money comes along too. So sometimes I don't want to do something, but, I throw a FU number at them and they come back saying, yep, that sounds good to us. And it's like, really? Okay, well, okay, that sounds good. I'll do that then. So working from home is a really interesting subject, because I think that in this day and age, it gives you the freedom to do what you want. And that's one of the big things. And going back to that survey that I put out earlier, a lot of people were saying that the thing holding them back is their country is going through a civil war, or they can't get a work visa to work in the places that they want, or they feel too old, or some people think that like their sex comes into it, whether, male, female, they don't feel like, they feel like that might be holding them back from the job. So whether it's sexism, ageism, race, whatever the things you think are holding you back, we have the internet these days. Like, first of all, like there a lot of these things, like, yes, in certain situations, there is sexism out there. There are things out there, but it's not as consistent as you might think. But, all those, sure, they do exist. But the thing is, we have the internet, we have complete freedom these days. And so, I was talking the other day on Facebook about how to, what are people's thoughts about working remotely? And, a lot of people saying, I would, but I don't know how to get clients. And the thing is, if you're on the internet, there's 7 billion people out there, and you can automate so much. You can put yourself out there. You can have an online presence. You want to get to a point where work is coming to you. And if you can picture that, and obviously starting out, it's not going to be this way in the beginning, but if you could wake up in the morning, go to your own office, or go to your computer in your home, and be able to sit down at your inbox and say, okay, no, yes, to all the projects that you want to do, and have complete free range to do that. Like, that is exactly what you want to have. And applying for jobs, all that stuff, you don't need to mail off a reel and a VHS cassette and all the stuff that we had to do. You have all this in place. And I think it's a great habit is to send off 5 applications a day. Just go on, look at job boards, fire them all out. And there's tools out there like Hootsuite and everything else where you literally have the internet searching and filtering all the effects jobs from LinkedIn to job boards everywhere, all into one big dashboard on your screen, where you literally have everything, with Google alerts, everything else, all being filtered into one place, where you in real time see all the jobs popping up that mention particles, that mention effects, that mention Vancouver or wherever you want to be. And I've done that to negotiate where I want to live for a month. It's like, I want to go to New York. I don't want to pay for a trip. So how would I do a job out there? And you have that freedom, and we have all that now. Like the internet, you can do anything. So saying yes to everything, I think, is really critical in the beginning, because you want to give yourself as many opportunities as you can. Long term, you want to get to a situation where you can start saying no. And my fiance, Christina, she's a vehicle designer. She does like vehicle wraps and a lot of artwork. And we were talking about that recently, about where she's now getting to a point where she can say yes to everything and be stressed all the time, working till 6 a.m. Or she can start saying no to the ones that she thinks are going to be a lot of work and not much, reward for what she wants. And it means that she can free up her time to focus on the ones that are really going to impact her portfolio, or going to really impact her career. She can focus on the ones that are going to help build connections, or financially just be ones that pay really well. So you ideally want to get to a situation where you can start to say no, but in the beginning, always say yes to everything. So again, jumping around, but in the beginning, working from home, I think that ideally you want, if you can, to work for other studios, just because being in a studio environment, like I worked from home for 2 or 3 years at the very beginning, probably about 2 years. And, I was good. I was getting work. I was working on like Half-Life and a couple other really big games. And I feel like the first 2 weeks of working at this place called Ambience, back in the day, it's a horrible studio these days, but at the time it was a really phenomenal studio. And I feel like the first 2 weeks there, I could I essentially had relearned everything from the last couple of years, because being around people who can inspire you, who can teach you, all of that was just life-changing in so many different ways. But not all of us have the opportunity to do that. So in the beginning, to get those credentials, to be able to get the big jobs, you might need to work from home. And, again, having the internet, even back in 1997, I could go online in a chat room like 3ds Max, and people will come in there and be like, hey, I need a lab coat built, or I need a car built. And you can be like, I'll model that. And you go out and do the job and make $200. Now we have infinite amounts of resources. So for you, it really comes down to how you want to approach that. But I think, working from home initially is a good way to get the credentials, to get the experience, to then go and work for other studios and be around good people. And, it's like a lot of things. I feel like in the beginning, it's good to be a generalist, but then you want to go be a specialist. But later on, you kind of go back to being a generalist before you move into more of a supervisor position. And I feel like this is the exact same way, that you might start out working from home initially, then you go work on site. But the ultimate goal is to work for yourself, whether it is on site, being a hired gun, or have your own home office, or launch your own studio, or what other iterations there are. So there's plenty of options out there. So, Mervin, I'll unmute you really quick, and because I figure you might be able to explain this question better. If you're comfortable talking on the mic, I just unmuted you. So are you there? Hey, man. Again, if you'd rather type or just me read it out, that's no problem too. I know I'm putting you on the spot. All right, no worries. That's totally fine, man. Basically, Mervin, you were asking about, I guess, starting out, whether to be, I believe, let me just double check, but so the question I had for the seminar was, I was torn between doing character animation route in Maya or doing the FXTD mentorship in Max. And I'm currently doing Cinema 4D and After Effects, mainly doing the compositing in-house production. Sorry, I'm just kind of skipping through this really quick. Yeah, I mean, so I guess like the main question is, do you want to work in animation or do you want to do effects? And I actually had that when I was about 18. I was asking, actually, yeah, I'll repeat what everyone else said, but whether or not I agree with this, but I used to love character animation. I've worked on a few shows like Max Steel, things like that back in the day. And I remember asking everyone around me, like, hey, should I focus on, sorry, change role to attendee. Yeah, should I focus on doing effects like I do, or should I be an animator? And everyone around me said, like, look, there's so many people every day being turned out at schools doing animation, and so you're essentially going in to compete with all of them. Or if like effects is what you're really good at, then stick with that, because it's in a much higher demand and a much lower supply of effects people than animators, for instance. So at least back then it was a really good point, because I liked animation, but at the same time, I was good at effects. And it was something that even right now, there's no job in higher demand than effects, because there's not enough good people to fill those positions. So you can charge what you want and you can do what you want. Now, that being said, like my honest answer for you would be figure out what you're passionate about, and like maybe you want to do both. Like I think there's nothing wrong with, let's say, saying, you want to. I think you want to specialize in one, but it might be, hey, I'm an animator, but I also do generalist stuff, and I got a knack for effects. There's nothing wrong with saying that and understanding that. If it means that when things dry up, if there's not any animation work around right now, you can, switch and do other things. But if you had to pick one or the other, honestly, it really comes down to what you're passionate about. I think do both, but at the same time, if one is you're more passionate about, or where do you want to work? In other words, what are the studios that you ideally want to work for? Because if you're going to say Pixar, a place like that, you're going to have a lot of competition. But at the same time, like if that's what you're going for, then it's pretty obvious what you want to do. But if it was more effects studios or smaller studios, then yeah, it's a tricky one just because it is apples and oranges, it's black and white. But I think it's one of those questions you just got to decide yourself, like what am I the most passionate about, and also what is going to give me job stability? Because even short term, it might be good to do one and then swap into the other. You know what I mean? So there's plenty of stuff. Like I always kept my modeling skills up because I never thought in a million years I would be able to do just effects for a living. So I want to kind of keep those backup skills. But yeah, it's definitely one that you got to kind of reflect for yourself on. But Mervyn, just let me know if that helped answer it a little bit. It is a really difficult question to answer, but just let me know, and if so, I can unmute you. But if anyone else has any questions, let me know. I'm going to read out a couple now just on Facebook, but I'll loop back in. So Josh, I'll try and read yours really quick. So Josh was saying, spent 15 years working high-end studios, then I left the VFX world basically to dedicate as much as possible to being a new dad, which is awesome. And again, I think it's cool too, because you want to, I think that we're in a very versatile industry where it's very easy to, alienate the ones we care about and just get stuck, consumed in what we do. So I think it's cool to be able to take those breaks and really nurture your relationships, because I've seen so many marriages, so many families just go to crap because we're in such an industry that it's designed, I hate to say it, with us just being mole people working night and day and killing ourselves for it. I took a contract doing some game content dev as a vendor from home and spent nearly 3 years doing that. And then the clients dropped the ball and the project died. So now I have a ton of work, can't even show, and isn't too relevant to VFX. I found your courses, want to get back into VFX, but I want to work from home because I'm living away from LA. So now my VFX reel is way out of date, trying to figure out the best order of operations to get my feet back into remote work and quickly. Sorry for the novel. No, that's awesome, man. So I know we kind of, I guess organically we've kind of touched on the working from home thing, but I mean, you guys let me know, like, is this something that interests you? Is this a subject that you guys want to hear more about? Because here's my thing, and I've kept my mouth shut for the longest time about this, but there are so many people out there who talk about like the sky is falling and, we need to unionize. And there's a lot of Scott Rosses and guys out there who are making a profit by talking about, like, putting fear in everyone about like how the industry is all dying and there's no work. Because even recently I had a lawyer who has a podcast, and he's like, I want you to come on the show. And I didn't realize until I got on there that he basically wanted me to talk about how bad and shaky and unstable the VFX industry is, which I don't think it is. Like, as long as you are proactive and care about your career, you can make anything work. But the big problem is that, VFX is globalizing. It is going to, all over the world. It isn't just LA anymore. Vancouver is the capital of the world right now. Montreal's getting work. London's getting work. There's work in Korea. There's work in China, the Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. And Brazil's starting to really grow. And Argentina, there's bleed effects and a lot of other places out there. And yeah, I mean, the whole world's getting a chance to do this stuff. Like, I just interviewed Armin Yahin, from the CEO of Main Road Post this week, and he talks about all the work they're doing in Russia. And yeah, I mean, the whole world is adapting, and I think that's great. What I don't like is that the industry, there is a lot of people trying to put that fear in, because it's a psychological thing. It's like a cult. If you scare enough people by educating them on how bad things are, then they turn to you saying, well, tell me what I need to do, because now I'm scared. I wasn't before, but now I am. And unfortunately, there is a lot of that out there. And the thing is that there's no real solution if your goal is just to say, well, we need to unionize, because it's not going to happen. It never will happen with VFX. The only way it will happen is if the industry completely bankrupts, like it completely levels out, is the only way. Like, you got to wait for everything to to crash before we can rebuild, and there's no way that's going to happen. So end of the day, we're never going to unionize, but it does put a few people in positions to be leaders in government positions. In other words, get promoted into being a government representative for VFX and all the things that come with it. So for me, that's always frustrated me that there are people out there kind of instilling that kind of fear in people when the solution isn't really an attainable one. And my solution for that was I started the podcast, and I wanted to educate people about how to be able to be an individual, how to treat yourself like a business, how to be able to negotiate what you want, all the fundamentals that I think as artists, as creatives, and it's not just 3D, it's design, it's animation, it's all these things. If you want to be good, if you want to get what you want, you've got to be able to really focus on the things that maybe you don't know where to begin with. There's not information out there to teach you it, or maybe it's the stuff that you kind of resist or fight against. So like a lot of us as artists think, well, I don't want to be a business. I don't want to know about that stuff because I'm an artist. I create, and it's really stubborn to think like that because I look at guys like Ash Thorpe or Andrew Kramer or all these other guys who are financially doing amazing, social media wise doing amazing. They get to pick the projects they want to do. They get to pick the vacations they want to do. They get to pick where they want to travel in the world. They get to pick and do what they want. And these are next level artists. These are people who are doing phenomenally well. And what's the difference between, I could mention 100 artists here, but just using those two as an example, what's the difference between them and you? And they're talented, but I'm sure a lot of you are talented as well. And what it really comes down to is that they've understood that they need to take their career seriously. You don't want to follow and just walk down the street and say, okay, someone tell me what to do. Someone hires you and says, go do this and then go do that. And then you hope that I hope the work doesn't dry up. I hope that someone cheaper doesn't come along. You're in a reactive mindset. You're essentially going to work every day, hoping that everything's going to work great and hoping that people will magically come to you and say, you deserve a pay rise, when none of that shit happens. It doesn't work that way. When you start to take the power back and decide, okay, well, what do I need to do to get to where I need to go? That changes everything. And when it comes to us now, like, again, going to the internet and everything else, unionizing and all the other BS that comes with it, none of that is going to benefit us. Film studios have the monopoly, and they essentially are going to always make everyone pay the minimal amount possible. All the way going to Vancouver, because Fox will basically say, we're not going to hire any visual effects studios in LA unless you have a studio in Vancouver, because we want to take care of all the subsidies and go through all that. So because of that, they get to pick and choose everything. But we live in a day and age where if you wanted to go make a short film, if you want to go make a film of your own, you can go on Kickstarter, you can go on GoFundMe or Indiegogo, you can get crowdfunded for what you want to do. We've got so many situations now where if you want to make some side income, you can go on Gumroad and make some tutorials, or you can go on TurboSquid and sell some assets. Like, you've got all the tools in front of you to be able to create the freedom that you want. And whether it's doing visual effects on projects or whether it's doing side income, passive income, doing, whatever you want. And we've got all the tools there to do it. And for me, with the podcast, for me, with a lot of this stuff, when it comes to your career, I wanted to give you guys the tools necessary to be able to go and be an Ash Thorpe or Andrew Kramer or whoever is out there. And if all of us are able to do that, then that is going to disrupt everything. If you're able to negotiate the money that you want, if you're able to work remotely, if you're able to make your own projects, fund your own projects, get together with a bunch of buddies and go make a short film to get funding to do a feature film, or work remotely from another country where earning US dollars is going to be 10 times what you would earn in your own country. All of these things are available to you. And it's more about just having to identify what they are and then lean into, the things that you don't want to do, that you're resistant about. A lot of us are afraid of job interviews or negotiating money. You don't want to negotiate money because someone might say no. And one of the key things about negotiating is that any good negotiator knows that the negotiation doesn't start until someone says no. And, even going through that, a lot of people I know have negotiated equity in a company, or they've negotiated, I know someone who negotiated the computers from the feature film when it was done. So not only would they get a certain amount of money, but when they finally hit that cap where they're like, we're not going to pay you anymore, he was able to say, well, I want all those new render nodes that you just bought when the job's done, because you won't need them anymore. So how about you pay me with that? So we have the creative ability to be able to negotiate freely for all the things that we want. But the thing is, a lot of us either are afraid of doing that because it makes us uncomfortable, which again is important because you need to lean into those pains. Or, some of us just are allergic to it. We just don't like the idea of like, I'm an artist, I don't want to know about the business, and I think branding, getting your name out there, all those things are really critical. And there's little tweaks to a lot of what we do. And, if time permits, I'll go through that. But all of this is, I think, really critical. So, Josh, for you, working remote, like building up your reel, I think is the number one thing, because when it comes down to it, your reel is everything. Your reel and contacts, I hate to say it, but I think networking and contacts are even more important than having a reel. Just because at the end of the day, it's the people that that are going to be able to help you get to where you need to be. And so finding a community of other artists, I'm trying not to mention the mentorship here because there's 100 things I can say, like, and I know, Josh, you're in LAS, but and we have that community. So, you've got that at your fingertips where a lot of the students are at MPC or RNH or all these other places doing really cool work. But even going online on forums or other places where you don't need to be a part of a course, but, you can build those communities. When I first started out, we had internet chat like FNet on IRC, and we had a 3ds Max channel. And like a lot of the people I still know today all started out there. And by having that community, it's a way to get to know everyone and build up relationships that way that later turn into longer relationships. So like I think that's really critical, but also you're real. And all it takes is 1 or 2 good shots. So I had someone, he was coming through LA and he's like, hey, can I meet up for a beer? I was like, all right. So he came by for a few minutes and he was asking like, hey, what do I do for my reel? I want to, I want to do something really cool. I was thinking about doing a 5-minute thing, blah, blah, blah. And I told him like, look, just start with 1 shot, but make it good. You want quality over quantity. So with that, you want to make a good, solid reel that people can look at and be like, yeah, they can't pick it apart. So I said, he's like, well, what if I did like a bridge getting blown up? I'm like, that's perfect. And then he's like, well, and they'll have like water underneath that all splashes around and like have a jet flying through and then this and this and this. And I'm like, no, bring it back. Just keep it simple. Just keep it as straightforward as you can, so that way you can focus on the things that are really good. And there's nothing wrong with niching down. Like I am jumping around a lot here, but I think also it's easy to position yourself more of an expert in the beginning if you look at what's the new tech coming out, what's there a big calling for. If there's a new reel flow coming out, like when Bifrost first came out after it went from being Naiad to Bifrost, that's a great chance for you to say, okay, great, there's this new tool coming out. I'm going to jump on that and I'm going to know it inside out. And then people are going to contact me because of that. I've done that with a lot of software, from like particle flow to thinking particles and everything in between. Fume Effects is a great example where when Fume finally came out, I'd been using it already for quite a long time, and I was putting out a lot of information about it, and it meant that suddenly I was the go-to Fume guy. I had like Rhythm and Hues, they wanted to set up their own Fume Effects department. When I went to ILM, everyone there, like my first day, everyone kept coming by saying, oh, you're the Fume Effects guy, which for me, I was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm nobody. Like, everyone around me is like 10 times better. I was really surprised by that, but like you're able to make yourself stand out by going to a blue ocean. There's a marketing term which is like blue ocean, red ocean, and essentially a red ocean is one that there's so many sharks in there, the ocean's all full of blood. It's there's too many people occupying it. But going to a blue ocean means that you're going to an area that there is no experts, there is no authority. It's a lot easier for you to build yourself up. So that might be something to look at, is like, what are the consistencies on job boards? What are the things that you can do, that there is a huge calling for? So, if you're doing camera tracking, go learn 3D equalizer, because that's the industry standard. So that's one way to get work. If you want to do 3D, I would learn Max, Maya, Houdini, Cinema 4D. Geographically, it depends where you're at and where you should focus on. But I would learn the big 3, because that way you've got 3 times the opportunities coming in. I wouldn't limit myself just to one package. It's good to start on one, but eventually, they're all the same freaking package. They've copied each other to death. So I would learn them all, and that way, any job that comes up, they're going to say, well, do you use this? And the answer is yes. But at the same time, if something new came along, like Moto comes along and you want to work in video games or similar industries, I would jump on that, because that way you'd be a Moto expert. That's how you position yourself. Bifrost comes out, you can be a Bifrost expert. There's so many cool new tools coming out. So like being able to position yourself as the photogrammetry expert for Udemy, sorry, not Udemy, what am I saying, for Unity, being able to do all that so you can scan environments. One of my friends created the world's largest body scanning company in the world, and he did all that by just buying a bunch of cameras, building a rig, and then adding more cameras and bit by bit, but then he could position himself that way. So what are the things that are going to make you unique? What's your angle that you can say, I'm so-and-so and this is what I do, and make yourself stand out, rather than being someone that when you apply for a job, it's like, hi, I do 3D. It's like, all right, great, that's awesome, but what makes you special? Because there's 100 other people applying today alone that want the job. Like what's different for you? But if you position yourself in a way that's going to make you stand out, then people are going to go to you because they're looking for someone who's an expert in that area. So if you know enough, it doesn't matter if you don't have 20 years of experience and all the other things. If you know more about the specific thing that they're trying to hire someone who knows about that subject, then instantly it's going to put you as the obvious expert. So yeah, definitely think that niching down, finding like what's the big thing in high demand right now and low supply is the critical thing to go for. Picking the right projects or picking the software. I look at a lot of reels and I like studio reels, and I realize like there's a big calling for plane crashes. So I always thought like, oh, that would be a good subject for training or whatever, because there's a lot of people doing that. If I go and do a keyword search analysis, like use SEMrush or a lot of those tools with the internet, again, there's so many tools out there to allow you to really understand like statistically what you should be doing. If I do keyword research, because like right now everyone talks about Houdini. Houdini's the thing to learn. If you do keyword research right now, like what people are talking about or in terms of like searches, everything else, you will look at Max and Meyer is going to be a couple of, like tens of millions, I think it is. And then like Houdini, I think it was like tens of thousands or whatever. So you can easily see like where the relevance is in certain things. And I'm not hating on any software. I'm just pointing out like it's very easy to actually go in and see where there is relevance. So like, again, building that dashboard where you're plugging in all the job posts coming in from like all these different boards, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from Twitter, all these different places. You've got this giant Minority Report like screen of things in real time coming up, and you can filter it all specifically on certain things and see what are the things that are coming up a lot, where are the things in high demand. If I wanted to get a position in a job right away, what's the best way in, and what's the side door I can use. So really niche down and figure out those subjects. All right, so I'll quickly go through a bit more. I know by the way, are you guys finding this useful? I'm going through a lot. I'm going through it quick, but that's just because I want to try and give as much information as I can in the limited amount of time. Okay, thanks for all the likes, guys. That's awesome. Yeah, I want to give as much as I can in the limited amount of time I got, but I'm also going to try and I'll get my team to build notes and all this stuff too. So later, if you want to get like summaries of all of this stuff, because I'm not doing it in a here's 10 points. I'm trying to give 1,000 points at once. So Suraj was saying, I'm just going to read these really quick. I'm an artist in India. I live in Mumbai. Right now, I'm doing a VFX course, and it's coming to an end. My question is, which type of studio should I join? We got Double Negative in Mumbai, which is a very big studio. Others, DNEG. There's a lot of small scale studios where I could start. Yeah. So cool. Like, hopefully, I just kind of like quickly skip through it. Yeah, but like, I guess what you're getting at is like, should I go big studio or small studio? I honestly think it's better to start at a small studio and then go big. Because it's all about momentum and growth. And if you go to a big studio, typically you're not going to get as much exposure. You're also typically a big studio is going to be doing big projects. So like if it's a animated feature film, something like that. I mean, a good example would be Animal Logic, who does like, what have they done? Lego, the movie, Happy Feet, all that stuff. I've been talking to Animal like my whole career, and I kept wanting to work there, but I didn't really. Timing wise, it just wasn't something I wanted to do. And finally, I agreed, okay, I'll come on as an effects lead on Happy Feet. It was their first feature film, so they told me it's going to be a year and a half through and through. And I figured first feature film at a new studio, CG feature, it's probably going to be about 3 years, and it was. So basically, I was meant to start there, and they kept pushing my date by a week. So they did it 3 times. Like I call up, like, hey, I'm ready to start. They're like, we need another week. And I had other jobs going on. It wasn't a big deal. But the 4th time they called, they're like, hey, why aren't you here? And I'm like, I moved to LA from Sydney, and I'm working on this other gig. And I look back years later when the movie finally finished. What was it, like 2005, I think. I was at a friend's place. He's one of the lighting supervisors at Sony, and we were watching the Oscars in LA, and his movie was up for an Oscar, and mine was too, but mine was up against Pirates of the Caribbean 2, so I had no chance. But it was a moment of reflecting where I look back at like the last 3 years, because Happy Feet had just come out and it won an Oscar, I think, that year, or multiple. And I looked at that, I was just like, all right, did I make the right decision? Because I could have gone and worked on Happy Feet as an effects lead, so it was a good position, but it would have been 3 years on that project doing snow and stuff, or what did I do in that 3 years? Okay, well, I moved to LA. I worked on all these different movies, all these different studios. I got to, do so much. And for me, it's very clear that I'd made the right decision by being able to move around and do a lot more than staying at one spot where, the growth is going to happen a lot slower. So if you go to a big studio, like 300 people or 1,000 people, and you're just starting out, you're not going to get as much growth because someone's going to say, all right, we want you to do, like, let's say background snow in these shots. And you'll be doing the same task over and over and over. You're not going to get the challenges, the exposure, all the things that are going to allow you to learn a lot quicker because there's not the fast turnaround deadlines. There's not, different challenges coming up every day. You go to a small studio, typically every 2 weeks, the commercial wraps, a new one comes up. First commercial I ever did was a talking dog, and I had to do like the jowls, replaced on the live action dog. And the next job I did was I do a print job of like a fire hydrant or whatever. And, every week would be a new challenge, and it forced me to grow and get better and better and better. And I'd be around other people, and we have new challenges, new stress. We would have to keep getting faster and better and learn new things. And the more I did that, the more I would grow. And I think for all of us working at small studios, you got a smaller team, you got a lot more on your plate. You can't always specialize in the beginning of your career, and I don't think that you should. But it's going to allow you to grow a lot more. So I've always said like the first 2 years should be at a smaller studio as a generalist. Even though you want to specialize, and it's good to specialize, start as a generalist, you get exposed to everything. And then from there, you can move forward. When I first moved to the States, there was a lot of, I was going thinking I'm going to go to Hollywood. It's going to be these amazing people. And there's a lot of talent, but there were a lot of people who they did one thing. They textured an object or they modeled hard surface, and that's all they did. And I was kind of shocked coming from Australia, like small little country at the time for the industry. And we would all be generalists. Like I could do hair, cloth, fur. I can model. I can animate characters. I can comp my own shots, light them, whatever it took, because it was expected of us. And all of us who are from smaller industries, I'm sure we're all the same way. Like I'm sure you guys will agree that we're all generalists. We don't have the luxury of just doing effects. But later you specialize, and by having that background, it means that you have a better understanding of the industry and of all those areas, which will make you a stronger supervisor later on and a stronger artist. In terms of your reel and everything else, doing 2 years at a smaller studio where you're doing commercials, things like that, 2-week turnarounds, even 1 year, you'll have 30, 40 pieces on your reel that are all professionally made, look amazing because it was a team effort. So that's really critical. Rather than going to work at one big studio on a big project that might be 6 months or a year, and all you have is some background snow at the end of it to show that off. So yeah, I definitely think do the small yards first and then go to the bigger studios later. And you might realize that you don't want to do the big ones later. You might, decide to go a different route. And obviously India's got a lot of studios. The downside is that there is a lot of big studios there, but you're not always going to get exposed to all of the core work. It's just like any like auto body shop or anything like that. They're things are going to get pulled apart, and certain studios are going to get picked because certain services can be done without the main supervisor on the project being in the same location. So like camera tracking, modeling, roto, a lot of that is always going to get sent down to India or certain other countries. So you're not always going to get exposed to the high-end stuff right away, but that doesn't mean that you aren't going to be able to have that exposure to at least get stuff on your reel, get a good understanding of all the tools, and then later start applying elsewhere. The good advantage of working at some of the biggest studios is that if you apply all the career stuff that you should be doing internally to that studio, you can, put the time in getting to know all the supervisors at the other locations, as well as the supervisors in your own studio, so that way you can get more responsibility, ask for more responsibility. Most people are, shy away from getting given more shots and more work. And if you're able to keep that up and continue to ask for that, that's going to put you more and more on the map. And the more you build those relationships, it might allow you to move to other locations and be able to step up in the company that you're at. So that's really critical too. Like one thing about ILM is that it used to be Lucasfilm, now it is ILM in Singapore, and although they encourage everyone to work from that office, you can use it as a stepping stone to start there and then be able to go to San Francisco or go to Vancouver and start to move around to the other studios. So again, that's the advantage of some of the bigger studios, is the fact that they have sister companies or offices around. So Prime Focus is a great example, and Prana as well, because you got Rhythm Hughes and everything else. So you're able to utilize the fact that they're part of a bigger facility too. But yeah, definitely, I think start out small, then grow big from there. Cool, guys. I'll keep reading through this really quick. So Joel Waltman saying, thanks for sharing the numbers. You're right that people get weird about it. But I think it's great to see. Great, and I wish more people do it. Sorry, I'm terrible at reading when I'm doing webinars. Yeah, so yeah, when it comes to money, I mean, people are weird about money, and I think that's fine. But at the same time, like, I think that because there's no information out there, I don't mind sharing numbers about this stuff, because I'm an artist, and, you know, I'm more doing it to kind of make a point that all of this is doable. You know, all of this is approachable. And I would have never thought I'd be able to make the numbers I mentioned as an artist, just because, like, you know, usually you'd have to be a big studio to do that. And that's the interesting thing, is that the more you start to think of yourself as a business rather than being an individual or an employee, you start to think of yourself as an entity. That's when it all changes. And I remember my best friend gave me a pen as a gift in a glass case, and he's like, "This is for when you sign your first $1 million check." And the thing was, when I moved back from Australia from LA, I studied catastrophic effects. And that was where I started to realize, like, I came back as an individual, but bit by bit, you would approach jobs and you would say, like, hey, this, you know, I'm Allan, but my studio is catastrophic. Bit by bit, the more you represent yourself as an entity, the more that they're going to say, what other services do you provide? And then the more that you build that trust, that relationship over time, the more that suddenly they're like, well, can you do animation? Can you do this? And suddenly you're going to go from just being an artist. Like, I spent about 3 years where I didn't touch the box. I didn't do any 3D at all. And that was because I was just producing and supervising. And the big thing was that I started bringing in jobs. And bit by bit, I'm like, all right, well, we're going to do a Warhammer game cinematic. This is going to be awesome. So we're bringing in modelers, animators, and suddenly you're doing all these big jobs where the budgets are huge, because you went from being an employee to suddenly being a freelancer remote and giving your budget for a job, and then they keep giving you more work, and then suddenly it's entire jobs. And again, all it takes is that one job to come along that changes everything. So I mentioned my partner, my fiance Christina. I remember her applying for a few jobs just 1 week after not really, you know, she wouldn't send her work around. It's more reputation based. And when she finally did, like within 1 day, 24 hours, it went from you know, looking for work to I'm going to move to Vancouver. I remember for me, the first time I moved to LA, I barely even remember applying for the job. I saw something pop up on that old website. You might remember it, High End 3D. There's a job forum on there. Someone said, hey, I'm looking for an effects person in LA. And I just sent an email that afternoon, like, oh yeah, whatever. And I, you know, suddenly I got a phone call that afternoon, and it's like, hey, can you be in LA next week? And that job is the starting point for me to then, like, when I got there, networking, I was able to build up more jobs and line more things up. And I mention this because all it takes is one job or one email to completely change your life, to change your career, to get you to, you know, to go to your dream job. And I always say, like, you got to be in it to win it, because end of the day, like, if you don't fire that email out, then how's that, you know, job going to ever happen? And again, looking at that survey earlier, there's a lot of people saying, you know, fear of failure or fear of success, you know, were the main things holding them back from really achieving their goals. And you look at that, it's like fear of success is actually really common. Another way to look at it is it's your inner critic. It's the voice in your head that says, like, don't do this because you're going to fail, or people are going to realize that you're a fraud. You're not good enough. Like, there's people out there who are better than you. And, you know, I think when I was a teenager, I had the, you know, I want to be the best in the world. I had a bit of an ego when I was like 14, 15. It wasn't an ego. I was just so excited. I wanted to be the best in all this. And I think when I quickly realized by 17, like, there's no such thing as the best. And who is that? And, you know, I'm comfortable not being the best. I just want to be happy and good at what I do. That changed everything. It takes that weight off your shoulders. But if there are people out there who are afraid that they're constantly being judged, you know, or or they can't apply somewhere because people are going to, essentially tell them the thing that they secretly expected all the time or suspected, that they're secret, they suck and they're not not good enough and they're a fraud. These are all the things that we constantly have, and whether it's with doing stuff online, public speaking, or just doing our work in general, I think all of us have that. And I have that. Like, I go to new jobs, especially when I was younger, and I would be insecure. And I think that's natural to have. And I think that it's sometimes good to embrace that and just to acknowledge, like, okay, I'm feeling insecure about it. What can I do to make myself feel better about it? Or what, how can I use this to my advantage? And, but the big one is the fear of failure. And that one is different because a lot of us use that as an excuse. I think that for me, fear of success or feeling insecure that maybe I am a fraud or whatever goes through my mind, that's something I can use to my advantage to say, okay, well, if I feel this way, why is that? Or what can I, why am I feeling that way? And what can I do to make myself feel better about that? If it's my work sucks, then great. I'll triple check everything. I'll make sure it's perfect. I'll do whatever I can, relying on that insecurity to make myself work harder to make sure that it is the best I can do. And that way I can feel comfortable about it. But the fear of failure is basically someone saying, I don't want to do this because maybe I'll fail. Maybe I won't succeed. Maybe I'll get rejected. Maybe I won't get the offer. So it's easier for me just not to do it at all. And it's an excuse because essentially what you're doing is saying, I don't want to try because what if I don't get the result that I want? So it's better for me not to even try at all. And that's why I say you got to be in it to win it, because those people who aren't, that person who doesn't send their reel off, 100% you're not going to get rejected. And you should, if that's going to make you feel good, great. But 100% you're not going to get the offer either. And that's the thing, is a lot of us feel like, okay, I won't apply, so that way I won't get rejected. But you're essentially making it pretty obvious that you're not going to get the opportunity either. And, our life, our career, all this stuff, it's all about taking those risks and really kind of controlling the situation as much as we can. But you got to put yourself out there. And I always think about the what ifs. And like every one of my friends who's successful, I always ask them that. I'm like, can you pinpoint the 1 or 2 or 3 things that you did in your career that got you all the success that you have? And every single one of them always has this big grin on their face because they're like, yep, I can. And I wasn't going to do it. And like last minute, I'm like, screw it, I'm going to do it. And here I am. Like, that was the job that got me to Weta or whatever it would be. And if you're not willing to do that because you might be the person who didn't bite the bullet and say, screw this, I'm going to bite the bullet and do this thing, then you're not going to have that situation. You're not going to be able to smile and say, well, I am where I wanted to be, because you never took that risk. But the risk takers are the ones that are going to succeed and get to where they want to go because they took that risk. They're willing to do it knowing that there's a chance they might fail, but what's the worst that can happen? What is the absolute worst that's going to happen if you try? Like, oh, you don't get the result you want. Well, great. Learn from that mistake and move forward and keep trying until you succeed. I've had so many people ask me like, oh yeah, like, you must have just woken up and been like, got good at effects and hit the ground running. I had like about a year and a half when I first started where I wasn't getting any work at all. And it took so much trying and ready to give up before I finally got the job that would then allow me to, have consistent work. And, I haven't applied for a job in 10, 12, 13 years. I don't know. But in the beginning, like, yeah, I failed and failed and failed, and I was ready to give up every step of the way. And I think that it's important for us all to realize, like, yeah, we're going to go through that, but the ones who stick with it and keep trying are the ones who are going to succeed. So I'll do a couple more, and then I'm going to have to wrap things up because I got a podcast I got to do. But also just touching base on the mentorship, I'll just say, like, this is the last day for the mentorship, and I'm going to do a Q&A later this evening. And I don't really imagine it being a Q&A. I actually thought about just getting a few of the Effects TD students to do a live webinar, because I don't know why, but like, I honestly think that what we have is so special. Like, everyone in there, and then I know a lot of you, here are actually from it. So, but yeah, I love what we have. Like, for me, it's the greatest thing I've ever accomplished, just because we've built a community of people who have focused on just bettering their skills. And it's such a positive community because we all encourage each other. We're not, sorry, I saw Jason Thielen. Dude, yeah, I used to work with Jason back in 2003. Awesome guy. Hey, man. So, but yeah, I mean, like, I couldn't be prouder, just because, like, there's so many of us who might have started out in the beginning of the course brand new, and the work wasn't that great. And then, yeah, just now looking at their work, it's like, holy crap, like, I would hire you in a second. And I've seen some people go off and get cool jobs. We built friendships. We do group meetups. Like I love it all. And it's just, there's a lot of training. It's the best work I've been able to do. I've given out everything I know, but at the same time, it's more about the fact that we stick with it. And there's a year of us just hammering it hard. So yeah, I couldn't be prouder of like what we've accomplished during that time. But yeah, I'm going to do a hangout later today, which will be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. So I'll read 2 or 3 more and I'm going to wrap things up. So I won't do a reel review right now. But I think I might do a public reel review soon, because I used to do the review my reel and I was bringing on like supervisors from different places and we'd review it together. And I think that was so cool. And I want to do more of that. It's just about, finding the time. But yeah, I'll definitely do one of those soon. I'll check out your stuff. Rehan was asking if I use Andrew's products. No, I don't. He's talking about Andrew Kramer. So no, I don't. I have a lot of respect for Andrew. I think that he's doing amazing stuff. It's not really within my tool sets, but Andrew's a great guy. I've had him on the podcast before. He's definitely a busy guy, and I'm doing some really cool stuff. So I like watching from the sidelines what he and all these other people are doing, because I've got a lot of respect for guys and girls who've really blown up their career and done great things, and it's just clear. It's just hard work. I mean, I was just in Europe in March, and I was hanging out with like Dan Rorty, who's about to launch his mentorship. He's an amazing character artist. Ash Thorpe, all these other people, and all of us. It's just obsession and hard work that gets us to where we want to go. But I feel like it's a lot of hard work in the beginning, and then afterwards you get to reap the benefits of building that thing that you're doing. And yeah, I think for a lot of us, it's now we get to be passionate. Like I was with Neil Blevins and all these other Goro Fujita and all these other great guys who, yeah, they're just killing it. And it's just so obvious that it's the hard work that's got them to where they want to be. So I'll do a couple more. So Vladimir was saying, in order to be able to decide how much you really want for your work and be able to negotiate everything, do you need your first name to have a name? So I mean, not making a name. It's not really, sorry, I'm terrible at reading right now. Not really a problem to negotiate anything if you know your worth. Okay, so it's basically, I think, unless I'm getting this wrong, if I am, sorry, Vladimir, but I think you were saying, like, is it important to have a name? In other words, to be somebody to be able to negotiate? And no, like, absolutely not. I think that you're real is number one. Like, this is what for me was the big selling point for the live action series, was basically that at the end of the day, when I want to hire someone, I don't care about like, who they are or what they can do. I care about like, can I sit them down in a chair tomorrow and get them to do work? And if they're able to show finished shots, not like, hey, I did a tutorial and it's a bit floaty, but like it looks cool. And I said this the other day in a review, like I don't care how cool something looks if like all the fundamentals are wrong, if your timing sucks, if your the weight distribution, all these things are wrong, then I don't give a shit, because anyone can follow the settings of a tutorial like Fireball or whatever, but if you're missing the main things that are going to make the shot get approved or finalized, that's what's important. So I care more about someone's reel than anything else. And the other key thing, and I wish more studios followed this, is just don't be a dick. Like I care more about someone's reputation, because I'll ask people like, hey, you worked with so-and-so. They're like, oh, stay away. That person was, like hiring them was like dropping a hand grenade in our office. That's again, like you want a positive environment, and I think it's really critical too. So being someone that's like laid back and great to get along with, because you want someone who in 2 a.m, you're going to be sitting next to that person, and if they've got attitude or they're trying to screw you over or argue with you, be difficult, that's not someone that you want in your company. You want someone who you can have a beer with and kick back and have a good time. I'm in Portland now. There's one of the guys who works at Nike, and I only met him once years ago, but like we were doing Superman in 2006 and hadn't seen or spoken to him since. And like we're buddies now because we went through that fun yet stressful experience back then, and you hold on to those experiences. So again, like it's such a small industry that you want a good reputation, you want to do good work, and that's going to build you your name. And there's a difference between a name and a name. And in other words, like you get me and other people who, yeah, we were pretty active doing stuff, and I didn't do any of that on purpose, but at this point, yeah, I embrace it, and I definitely work hard to try and stay relevant and do a lot of stuff. But at the same time, like it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who nobody has heard of outside of 5 studios who are 10 times better than me. I'm sure there's shitloads of them out there. But the thing is, they have a name within those 5 studios or whatever that they're working for, and that's all they need. That's their well. for me, like I'd rather a global well because I like the hard work I put in, and I'm happy to do it in as many wells as I can because it gives me the opportunities. I've had the opportunity to direct and do a lot of things that I never would have been able to do if I'd done it the linear path that everyone else would do, because it would take too long. But by having all those relationships I've built, by having worked with plenty of people, I get opportunities that come up that I never would even think about. And now for me, that's what I want. But for other people, you mightn't want to have to hustle every day. You might just want to have like the 5 places that you just alternate back and forth from, or one place you work for, but then 4 backups in case that one ever goes sour. So like I said, like there's going to be people out there that have quote unquote name, and it could be freaking amazing, but they have a name within their industry. It doesn't need to be a name everywhere else. And just because you have a name also means that you might have a good or bad reputation. So, for me, it might be like, Allan, you're sending me too many damn emails. But yeah, obviously I've tried to like hit you guys hard the last 30 days with as much content as I can. And, but yeah, it's just like, that's just it. Like we all have our circles, and it's just a matter of how broad you want to go. I honestly think that like networking, exposure, all those things are so critical. And I think that we all need to do that. And that's where you get to that next level where I mentioned Ash and guys like that. That's because they've worked hard. But, actually, I'll also mention this really quick, like taking time to market yourself. I mean, that's part of like, let's say treating yourself like a business. That means that you need to manage yourself. You need to be the artist, but you also need to manage yourself. You need to do finances, negotiation, the new business development, all these things. But marketing is a big part of it, branding, all those things, because you want to build a marketing machine where people come to you for work. And again, going back to like, you could be the best artist in the world. If no one knows who you are, then how are you going to get work? That phrase I keep repeating, it's so critical. So by just simply doing things like when you finish a job, like pick a project that you think is going to be really fulfilling to you, you enjoy it. But then when you finish it, keep all the play blasts you do, keep all the things. Like one of the things we do in the FXTD mentorship is I built a tool, like we learn how to script it to do play blasts, to do previews, but it saves out every single one you do. And it's just cool because then you can review all your work and see like what I do yesterday, things like that. But it's also great because at the end of the job, take all the work, your render passes, your previews and play blasts and screenshots and everything behind the scenes that you've done, and go and build like a work in progress reel, go and build like a montage breakdown of what you've done. It takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes to go and get all of your work from a project and build it out and use that to get some exposure. Put it on Vimeo, put it on YouTube, put up some screenshots on your website. This way people can see it. They can see the wireframe, the turntable, they can see all the breakdowns of how you did it all. And it shows your process, but it also gets you recognition. And like, why not do that? Like, why not look at, okay, leveraging what you've made, why don't you give it legs beyond just a job? You don't need to just finish a Call of Duty project or something and then walk away from it. Why don't you collect all the information you have and then, maybe go and do a tutorial for 3D World magazine, or go do a breakdown of all the stuff and put it on Vimeo and get people to enjoy it and see how you work. And that is going to make people remember who you are. And at the same time, people get to see your process, understand how you work. All of this, it's worth doing that little bit of extra work so that way you give legs to what you're doing. So I'll do 2 or 3 more and then I'm going to wrap it up. But yeah, Eduardo, Kevin, Richard, Mahmoud, Subhash, Goran, it's so cool to see all of you guys in here. This is awesome. So Kevin said, I followed Allan's advice for about a year and a half ago, and I started to treat myself as a brand instead of just an individual. And I've had a lot of positive feedback from my friends, family, and people in the industry. It was scary to take the first step, but totally worth it. So go for it. Kevin, that's awesome, man. That's so cool. And yeah, honestly, it's just been really cool. Like I've had some people who, let's say, they follow how to like write a proper cover letter. And I've had some people be like, oh yeah, now I get callbacks, callback rejections instead of no callback. But then other people are like, dude, like now I line up all my work. I just fire out like templated emails and I get, work lined up for good. And the same thing with branding and all these other things. Like as soon as you start to position yourself, think about how you want to be perceived. Think about your message of how you're communicating. I collect like every job application. I probably get about 6 a day because I want to do a reel breakdown at some point, or sorry, email breakdown at some point of like all the good and the bad that's been sent. Because I get emails where people CC me and 100 other studios on the same email, and like an email chain saying I want a job, and then other people who write like amazing emails, and others who are like, hi, I'm I'm Bill and I want to apply for a job. Here's a picture of my dog, and here's all the problems going on in my life that I want you to fix. You know what I mean? Like, really looking at the perception of like how other people are going to look at you and how you're presenting yourself. It's so critical. So for you, like for all of you, I would do this right now. I'd say like, okay, like time to do a self audit on where I'm at. Like, what's my real look like compared to everyone else's? If you go to LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is really great because it has also searched for is on the right tab, and it's pretty interesting because you can click on someone's profile. Maybe I can do this really quick because I think this is really like another great example of how you really need to kind of look at how you're perceived. So I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody really quick. Okay, let's just click on this guy. So we got this guy. Apologies if it's anyone I know. But this is a good example because you got CG Generalist, lighting artist, works wherever. And then on the right, you're going to get all the people who are similar. Okay, so if I typed in Allan McKay, so we got this guy. And but on the right side, it's going to say people also who are kind of considered similar people. So Rigel's, he's been in the effects mentorship. Anzi, I'm going to be working with soon. Des is over at Weta. Matt Radford, I forget where he is now, but he used to work at Blur. Lindsay is a recruiter. So it's kind of interesting because I don't really update my LinkedIn too often now, but usually this would be very laser focused. And I think it's kind of interesting that it's a bit more diverse now, like VFX producer, recruiter. It's a bit more diverse. But let's look at Anzi, for instance, because I think Anzi is more defined as effects guy. So I'm pretty sure you're going to find effects people like Will, Joe, Hristo. Yes, I mean, this is really relevant because you can see all these people are fitting into an effects category. So I mention this because, again, like you want to see that am I positioning myself correctly where it is showing me up with all the known suspects that you would expect, like Hristo, Joe, Will. That's a good example of like people who are typically looking at Anzi are going to be also looking at Joe because they both do effects and whatnot. So what if you type your name in and it's coming up with web page designers or something like that? Then clearly you need to build more awareness around what you're doing as well as work on your message to make sure it is actually focused on displaying you correctly. Because like I went to an industry mixer last night. It was a business thing, but it was just interesting going around and seeing some people knew how to present themselves and other people, they could talk for 30 minutes and I have no idea what they do. And you've got to really work on your sound bites, have that canned material. So that way, no matter what situation you're in, you don't even need to think about it. You're able to say it and it's so clear and precise. So all of these things, I could build a big to-do list here, but like all of these things are really critical because you want to see how you're perceived by everyone else. You don't want it to be work. You don't want people to have to think really hard to think like, well, what the hell are you? You know what I mean? And I've had friends who have known for years, but I've known them as 3D guy, and I didn't give a crap about what they did. I didn't really care about talking about work when I'm with them. But then one day they introduced themselves to someone else around me, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm a 3D modeler. And I'm like, dude, I didn't know that. Like, I've had all this modeling work I could have given you if you would just let me know that that's what you do. But I just, I didn't really think about it. So, by someone having the soundbite of, hi, I'm Keith, and I'm a 3D modeler. I do a lot of animation as well as hard surface modeling. That rolls right off your tongue. But instantly, I know right away that, if I have any car work, if I have any character work, you're the person to talk to. And at the same time, when you're applying for a job, if you send in, I'm a 3D generalist, congratulations, there's 100 other people doing the same thing. If you specialize, you can still say I'm a 3D generalist, so you don't eliminate the possibility of generalist work and all the other stuff. But if you said, hi, I'm Allan, and I am a lighting artist. I typically do a lot of realistic, like photorealistic feature film work with lighting, but I also do a lot of generalist work too. Whatever. The whole point is that instantly I can say, okay, you're a lighter, and I can categorize you. I know in my head that now you're the lighting person. But at the same time, you did use those keywords of I'm also a generalist. So it's like, okay, well, we don't have lighting work right now, but what do you like with modeling or whatever? I know that you're not just niched into that one thing. So it's always good to specialize because you're essentially defining who you are. But then from there, you can, go beyond that and fill it out a little bit more. So I could say, I'm a VFX supervisor, but I'm a VFX supervisor and technical director. That would easily say, okay, great. Well, typically I'm going to be looking for soup work, bidding, helping out studios grow. But at the same time, I work on the box too. So if you have effects work, yeah, I can do that stuff too. But I'm a lot more picky about the type of jobs that I do. Again, it's all about positioning, and it all starts with you and what your message is. So lucky last, I'm going to do one more. Let's see who the lucky person is. A lot of stuff in here. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to... So Nitesh was saying examples of good reels. Yeah, I won't... Now, I think what I will do is I'll do like a reel review sometime and go through this, but that's actually a good point. Is like, what's a good example of a good reel and a bad reel? And it's kind of hard because, I don't want to point my finger at anyone and say this is a terrible reel. But I will say, here's some stuff that... let me just bring this up really quick. So I'll use my reel as an example. My reel is old, and the only reason I cut a 2013 reel was because I was just bored. I was like, hey, I haven't updated mine in 7 years. I'll do it again. And again, that's a place that you want to get to is more reputation. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that, I would be updating my reel all the time if I was actively trying to seek that stuff out. But one of the key things, I saw a few, I've been looking at reels this week. I've been looking at a lot of people's reels, and it's just the biggest note. Like, this is stuff I've mentioned before, but it's like, why are you not doing this? Okay, name, title, okay, what I do. In fact, exactly what I just said a second ago. And then, hey, look at that, email, phone, city. Like, these are the most critical and yet overlooked things. Because usually you have some people who their reel just starts, and I'm like, all right, like, what am I looking at? Because again, think from the perspective of the people viewing it. That was the biggest thing for me, was when I started to review my own work, when I started thinking like, okay, what's my supervisor going to say? And he's going to say, these edges are bad and this and this and this. The more I got to like that's another major point of growth, where I could start to have them echoing in my ear. I could imitate what they're going to say before they said it. And it made a world of difference, because it meant whatever I showed them was like close to finished every single time. But if I look at someone's reel and it's instantly starting here, I'm going to be like, are you a modeler? Did you make the plane? Are you tracking? Like, what the hell is this? So set the tone by me saying effects, or whatever. Then it's like, okay, great. So you supervised a lot of these shots, or you did the effects. Okay, that's good. Now I understand I'm going to be looking at the effects. Who the name is, again, like, you might recognize who they are, but more importantly, especially on like old VHS cassettes, the sleeve would get lost so often. So like, I want to hire this person, but I don't know where their stuff is or who they are. So having that there, but this is the critical stuff, because there's, even this week, there's so many people, I'm like, I have no idea what country you are in, and like, I'd go to their website, I'd go everywhere, and I'm like, where are you? Like, if I were to hire you, like, are you in LA? Like, where are you located? And, I mentioned this before too, but like, have a phone number, because there's been times where I've wanted to hire people and I didn't have their phone number, but someone else had a phone number, so I end up calling that person, and by the time they replied to the email that I sent, I'd already filled the position. Because like the next day they're like, hey, I saw your email, what's up? And it's like, oh, never mind, position's gone. So simple thing, but really critical. And I've, doing some breakdowns, like, don't overdo it. I could go on and on about this stuff, but like a couple of breakdowns is fine, but like too many, it's just like, all right, now I'm going to turn this off. But finally, I mentioned this one because it's always shocked me, but when I was at Blur, Kirby, who's the VFX soup there, I had a big list of people. I'm like, I want to hire these people for our team. And he's like, oh yeah, this guy, he was at the top of my list to hire until I saw his contact information. And now he's on my do not hire list. And it was because he had done like a really crappy 3D like version of his name, and it looked terrible. And like, I agree, but maybe, I don't know, like, I don't know what the story is behind it, but it looked really bad. The thing is, the perception of Kirby was that, maybe all of the work on his reel, it was his supervisor was really good, and him as an artist, like, his contact information was the only piece that wasn't a production piece, is his personal work. And so it kind of said a lot about like what he can do. So if that's like the level, of like what he thinks is good enough for his reel, then I don't want him, because it means that I'm going to be supervising him the whole time. So I always mention that one because it shocked me so much that someone's contact information could cost them a job working on a really cool job at a really cool studio. And, I figure, do black and white text, don't risk it. But like, ultimately you gotta think about like, what are the holes that people could poke in my work? So I could look at my work and it's like, is there anything on here that I could kill because it's, I'm keeping it there because it's nostalgic. I worked really hard on that, therefore I need to show it. Or this is my student work or whatever. And I could go on and on about reel stuff. I won't get into it. But yeah, I mean, that would be a key thing. My reel is way too long, but that's because I'm not applying for studio work. It's more a sample reel that I'm giving to clients. Because even yesterday I got a phone call, randomly answered the phone, and someone's like, "Hi, I've got a commercial I want to get done. You did this, this, and this on your reel. Can you shoot the commercial and do it all? And we just pay you for it." And that was the phone call. And just by having a reel where people could say, "Hey, there's a train. We want exactly that." That to them is able to open up a lot of doors. So with Catastrophic, I've got multiple reels. I've got a game cinematic reel, a car reel, more cartoony reel, matte painting, all these different things. So that way I can send out the right one for the right services that I'm trying to provide for a certain client. And that again is really critical, because you don't want to be sending a reel, let's say going back to, I have my window open right now. Going back to, I don't think he's in here anymore. But anyway, oh no, sorry, it was Mervin. So Mervin saying with animation and effects, if you were sending an animation reel with some effects, I would probably want to keep them as much as I could separate, because you're sending mixed messages. But that doesn't mean you can't send two reels. So I get a lot of people who are technical directors saying, well, should I show off all the tools that I've developed, or should I show off my production work? And I say both, just separate reels. Send in two reels. One is all the production work and all the stuff that you've done. But obviously as a technical director, not an effects technical director, but just a regular TD, people aren't going to be able to see what you contributed to it. So that's when you show a separate reel, which doesn't look as polished, because it's usually screen captured Mac scripts or Mel scripts or whatever it's going to be. But it at least showcases these are the tools I developed for this project, and this is what I'm doing. So yeah, all that stuff's really critical. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. And I know I've kind of just fired the stuff out, really rapid fire to a lot of you. And so I mean, you'll be able to watch the replay, and I was hoping to interact with a lot more of you, but given what's on my plate today and just leading up to now, it's just I haven't been able to kind of plan and give you guys a heads up. Because usually what I do with a career intensive is I would say, hey, a week from now we're going to do a career intensive. By the way, fill out this quick survey letting me know what are your big questions you have, things like that. And usually I have my team with me, so Troy or someone would usually message everyone to say, hey, do you want to talk to Allan? He's got time in a minute. What are the questions you want to ask? And then we would, unmute that person. I can have a one-on-one conversation with all of us listening. And I really like that, because it's a lot more organic than me just going chat, and you guys falling asleep. But at the same time, I want to do more of those, but obviously this week's just been killer, and there's going to be more coming up. So I'm going to do another Q&A session tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and then how am I doing the time? I got to double check. 6 p.m. Pacific time, and then 9 p.m. tonight as well. So, okay, cool. I got a bit of time. So there'll be more of that coming. And once this fireball stuff's done, I will be putting out more training soon. So just because this is ending doesn't mean that there's not lots more coming. But in the meantime, shoot me an email. Let me know if there's any specific subjects that you want to know more about. And finally, I will just mention that this is the last day to sign up for the Effects TD mentorship. So if you want to join us, you've got lifetime access. So once you're in for life. And there's people from Effects TD1, even right now, I could pinpoint you guys on in the Facebook here right now. There's a lot of you, and the thing is, a lot of you guys, you're still showing up to the reviews every week, because at a certain point, if it got too full, then that'd be fine. But I don't mind you guys continuing to show up, because you're the ones who are showing up for reviews and working on yourself, and I'm always going to encourage that. But other people, obviously, after a while, you go through the training and then you get busy, you move on to the next thing. That's totally fine too. But I'm always going to encourage you to keep improving your skills and keep what we have going on. So I'm a big fan of that. All right, so I hope you benefited from this episode. Obviously, we went through a lot, and that was the one thing I was very conscious of as we were doing this, is that I was trying to cram as much information in as quick as I can. So I was definitely going rapid fire, and I was very conscious about the fact that, a lot of us are probably not going to be able to keep up with the amount of information being shared all the time. And that's why I suggest to go back and listen to this a few more times, bring a pen and paper and look for the things that really stand out, really resonate with you, that you can take from this. At the same time, I have the show notes if you want to check them out. Go to allanmckay.com/88, and a lot of this is broken down into a lot of key points and a lot of information that you'll be able to take away from this as well. So I highly suggest you do that as well. Next episode, I'm going to be speaking with Scott Dyke, who's the visual effects supervisor for Valerian. And just in case you're not aware, Mark Simonetti, a good buddy of mine who is in episode 45, also was working on Valerian 2. I believe he was the art director on it. He was doing a lot of concept work directly with Luc Besson. And I'm tempted to get him back too. I think it would just be a lot of fun, even if it's a 10-minute conversation just about his experience on it too. But talking with Scott, it was really fun just talking about Valerian, talking about a lot of his past being in the industry, working with Sam Raimi on all of the Spider-Man movies, working with Sony on a lot of really big feature film projects, and just in general, his outtake on a lot of things. So this is a really cool episode, and that will be episode 89 coming up next. All right, so I'll leave it there for now. If you want to check out Mark Simonetti's episode in the meantime, you can check it out. Mark obviously has worked on Game of Thrones directly with George R.R. Martin, as well as doing a lot of phenomenal work. He's just a super cool guy. You can check that out, allanmckay.com/45. So that being said, I will be back next episode with Scott Stockdyke, which will be another killer episode. All right, so I will leave it there. Rock on. And by the way, I don't know why the hell I've always said rock on. It's something that just organically came up without me really even thinking about it. And it became something that now I have to say consistently, or I tend to say consistently just because of habit. But anyway, maybe there's something more intelligent I can say at the very end of it. Like, make today the most productive day. Or go get some shit done. Or as Mitch Bowler I've had on here from Pencil Kings always says, crush, kill, destroy. Anyway, so rock on. Have a good day. I'll be back.